What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Kinetic Blade and how I would rank and compare this to the other mobility items that we have in Fortnite Chapter 6. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, comment down below what your favorite mobility item is this season or how you would rank these, and let's get right into it. So, with yesterday's update, the Kinetic Blade was unvaulted, and this is a fan favorite mobility item, and a lot of people I've seen kind of happy to see its return. And then I've also seen people say it doesn't feel as good as it did in the past, or even people saying it's an overrated item and people are just nostalgic and it's really not that good. Although this is one of my favorite mobility items of all time in Fortnite, a lot of that had to do with the fact that I thought it was a good and fun mobility item, but it was also balanced. Like, it was good mobility that you could use to travel around the map or push people, but it wasn't incredibly busted at either. It wasn't like you were just flying around the map incredibly quickly like the War Machine hover jets, and it wasn't a free escape in any bad situation either. Like, if you played poorly with this item, you would still definitely lose fights, and I think that's why the Kinetic Blade feels really underwhelming in Chapter 6. Having things like the Void Mask in the loot pool, which allows you to just literally teleport. Shockwaves are much better for getting out of like really bad situations, and even the Typhoon Blade, like having all of these items in the loot pool at the same time makes the Kinetic Blade, I feel like, not shine as much as it did when it was the main mobility item. There was other mobility in Chapter 4 Season 2, but it was things like the web shooters, the Attack on Titan thing, which was kind of like the Grapple Blade. It was more of like the swinging mobility, and so the Kinetic Blade really shined in those situations. Then also the Red Eye AR having a slower fire rate, I feel like made it to where you weren't as punished for doing like the charge up time as you are with something like the Hollow Twister in the game. So I think it's a combination of the loot pool and like the other mobility items that make the Kinetic Blade feel pretty underwhelming now, whereas in Chapter 4 Season 2, it was a great mobility item, and it still is quite good. For traveling around the map, I think it does this fine, but the fact that it now has a durability charge that degrades with each use makes it a lot more limited in that aspect than it was in Chapter 4. One of the things that was really nice about this in Chapter 4 was, it was a mobility item. You found it, and then like you were good to go for the rest of the game. You didn't have to worry about finding more mobility. But now the durability makes it not as spammable and makes it to where you can't just kind of get it and then not worry about mobility. Also in Chapter 4, I didn't really use cars that much, and a lot of other players didn't. They were pretty different back then and didn't do well off-road. Whereas Chapter 5 onward, the cars handle quite well off-road. And you've seen a lot more people use cars to travel the map and use cars in fights as well. So the traveling around the map aspect of this item isn't as important to me because I'm often using cars in Chapter 6. But even in ignoring cars completely, I still think the mask is definitely my preferred mobility item for like traveling or positioning around the map. Like, the Typhoon Blade is arguably better than the Kinetic Blade as well when it just comes to like traveling. But if I need to get on a mountain or on a rooftop and I want to go to that specific spot, being able to throw the void ball and then just teleport straight there and not have to worry about, my character taking damage in between where I am and where I'm going, I think is really good. So for that style of mobility, I definitely prefer the Void Mask than the Kinetic Blade. And then the other kind of real situations where you need mobility items is going to be when you're pushing enemies or if you're trying to get out of a bad situation. And with the Kinetic Blade being added, I still think Shockwaves are hands down the best mobility item in the game for this. And if we look back at Chapter 4 Season 2, Shockwaves weren't in the loot pool, so that gave more, attention to the Kinetic Blade, or the Kinetic Blade excelled over the other mobility items in that aspect because it wasn't competing with Shockwaves. If you're trying to use the Kinetic Blade to push somebody or get out of a bad situation, the fact that it has a charge up time on the dash is very punishable. And then I also feel like you travel a bit slower in air with the Kinetic Blade than you do with Shocks, or at least there is kind of that delay if you dash and then try to do another dash. That ramp up time leaves you very exposed in a way that Shockwaves aren't. So if I'm getting fried and need to like get out of a situation, or if I get damage on someone and really want to push them, I think Shockwaves are still hands down my preferred mobility item for those situations. Any sort of like very urgent, time is of the essence situation, I think Shockwaves are just incredible. But I also think the Void Mask also does both of those things a lot better than the Kinetic Blade. Again, if you're getting chased and you need to run away, you can just throw the Void Ball and then TP to it. There is the time, it takes for you to throw the ball and for it to travel. But I think still the Kinetic Blade leaves you very vulnerable in ways that the Void Mask doesn't. So if I needed to push somebody, I still think I would rather have the Void Mask over Shockwaves as well. So for me, since I like carrying 2 mobility items, I typically choose one that I think is, best for traveling, and then one that I think is best for pushing enemies or for those dire situations. And so if I have my choice of anything, it's going to be with Mask and Shockwaves. Those are my 2 preferred mobility items. I've kind of laid that out over the course of this video. I think both the Void Mask and Shockwaves do what they do, or kind of solve my needs better than any of the other mobility items. If I can't find one or the other, though, I'm happy to have the Kinetic Blade. It's much better than having nothing at all. And I don't feel like terrible having the Kinetic Blade. Like if I have to have Kinetic Blade and Shocks or Kinetic Blade and Mask, sure, there's things I'd rather have, but it's not like terrible. Like I would put the Shockwaves and the Mask in S tier, and then probably the Kinetic Blade in A tier. Having the Mask and being able to just teleport where you want, I think is great for positioning. And that's like something I really care about with my traveling mobility. If I want to get exactly on a roof or exactly on a mountain, the Void Mask is great for that. And then the Shockwaves, like I've already outlined, they're the best in those urgent situations. And when I'm in a bad situation like that, I pretty much always wish I had Shockwaves. One benefit of the Mask as well, which is kind of niche, is going to be when you're fighting on island. The fact that you can throw your Void Portal from one island to the other and then just teleport straight there and not have to worry about gliding is something that the Mask does better than any of the other mobility items in the game. And that's a very important situation, in my opinion. I think those island fights are typically very important. Not only do you get the medallion, but you deny somebody else having that invisibility medallion. So I put a fair amount of weight on those fights and I care about them a lot. So whenever I'm on island, I do really want to have the Void Mask. And that's just another reason why I would rather have it over the Kinetic Blade. One thing that the Kinetic Blade and even the Typhoon Blade do a lot better than the other mobility items is going to be that they're good at saving yourself from fall damage, especially if you get knocked from somebody using the Typhoon Blade. This has become really, really common as Chapter 6 has gone on, where Typhoon Blade users just try to like use their dash attack to send you to your death. And there's like a fair amount of mountains on this map where people will really go for this play where they just try to, knock you back, cause you fall damage. Maybe they don't eliminate you this way, but even just causing you a fair amount of fall damage can really tip the fight in your favor, or their favor, sorry. And this will happen on rooftops or anything as well. Like I feel like every single day I play this game, more and more people are trying to like make that play work or really playing for that. So having an item that helps deal with that is a pretty big deal. And I feel like both swords do really well at this because you could just take them out and then do the dash to catch yourself. I think for the Typhoon Blade, either dash works. If you switch to the Kinetic Blade, you're going to need to do the actual mobility dash. So for me, it's L2. For you, it's probably going to be whatever your aim down sight button is, regardless of your mouse or controller. Whatever button activates the dash with the Kinetic Blade, if you do get knocked back by somebody using the Typhoon Blade, you can just pull this out quickly and then tap it and then hopefully get out of there. And like I said, both of these things, both of the swords work well and accomplish this, but I like the Kinetic Blade more for this because its dash is an actual mobility, so you can reposition better. Not only can you, avoid that fall damage, but you can chain that into even more dashes, maybe push the person again if you want, maybe push to like kind of a mid-range situation so you can AR them. I feel like you just have more choices in those situations using the Kinetic Blade rather than just I'm avoiding fall damage. You avoid fall damage and you're in your mobility, so hopefully you can reposition and then put yourself somewhere where that fight is more winnable for you. I'm not really 100% certain if I want to carry this specifically for that. Like it is a very good thing that it can do that, and that's a situation that comes up a lot, like I said, so I might see myself in the future ditching the Mask or ditching Shockwaves for the Kinetic Blade to hopefully outplay those situations more. And if you are struggling with those situations, carrying one of the swords can really help. But as of now, I still think Shockwaves and the Void Mask are my preferred mobility items. Kinetic blade isn't terrible though. I'm happy to use it, and there is some advantages it has over the other mobility items for sure. The void mask you can also use to potentially avoid fall damage, but the thing about it is you have to swap to it, throw the ball, and then teleport to your ball. So there's just more time involved, and you might not have enough time to do all that before you hit the ground. Whereas Kinetic Blade, you swap to it, you hit left trigger, and then you're avoiding the fall damage and you're doing your movement. So I think the Kinetic Blade is best at that. But let me know what you guys think of the Kinetic Blade returning in Chapter 6 and how you would rank the mobility items this season. If you guys did find this to be helpful, informative, interesting, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.